Hello friends, my name is Richard Mumford. I'm with Climbing Innovations, and the title of today's video is What Do We Call It? There is momentum to simplify the acronyms of the climbing systems we use. Perhaps it comes from missed or forgotten elements of these techniques, but I think much is lost in doing this. These acronyms are designed to be general in nature, but should be easily understood without being so broad they become almost meaningless. Many times things look the same until we see the differences. There has always been some confusion between DRT and DdRT, and I think a slight modification fixes that. SRT, or single rope technique. For one, it has a free end and a fixed end, and they will most likely be out of reach of the climber. Let me show you what I mean. If I'm climbing on what we would typically call SRT, I could have some kind of a cinched canopy anchor, and I could be down here on the line climbing to that fixed end. I could also have a base anchor. This end of my line could be connected to the base. It could be connected to another part of the tree. It could be connected to another tree nearby. But again, I would be climbing on this part of the line, and that anchor would be out of reach. Number two, it may be on a static or a dynamic rope. Number three, it may be stationary, or it may be perhaps moving. Now, I know a lot of you guys are thinking, can't be moving. Let me just show you a demonstration. This is what I use when I'm teaching SRT rope walking. So the way it works, I call it the rope master. It's either an exercise machine or it's a training technique. I'll have a pestle rig, or you can even have a figure eight or a carabiner with a munter. And then down here, I'll have a length of rope. It could be 200, 300 feet, depending on how much exercise the person wants. So I become the fixed end. In other words, I have control over it. It can be either completely stopped, or I can let a little rope out. On the other side, I'll have a climber over here, and he'll be climbing SRT. And I can stand in front of that climber and give him some guidance about what kind of steps to make. Don't make bicycle steps. Don't keep your feet side by side as they go up the rope. I can help them if they get stuck. I can just lower them right back down to the ground. There's no height that they have to worry about if they get stuck or they get caught. If they have difficulties undoing the cam on their ascender, I can explain that to them, or I can just simply put them on the ground. We work out how the cams work, and the climber can go back up the rope. It's a very simple system, but as the climber is doing that single rope technique, this rope is traveling up and over all the anchors and feeding out of my 600-foot bag. So indeed, the rope is very much moving, but again, it's a single rope technique. Using the same single rope technique, I can establish a yo-yo system. For a climber, a 3-to-1 mechanical advantage. If I'm hoisting somebody, a 2-to-1 mechanical advantage, but is still very much on a single rope using the single rope technique. Additional ropes can be added, but it's still very much a single rope technique. You can have two single rope techniques side by side. It's often used in industrial access. It's becoming more popular in arboriculture, but it's still very much a SRT or single rope technique. It's just done multiple times. DRT, or double rope technique. And I'll preface this with, let's not get all hung up on the fact that it's still one rope, all right? It's not what single rope means. It can be two ropes that are tied together, and it can be whatever it takes to make that. That's not the point. And I'd rather not get all tied up, excuse the pun, in that. That's not the point. In DRT, it usually means that a single rope is doubled over something. It goes up and over something. It's doubled over an object. It has two fixed ends. Most of you have seen DRT used in competitions, or many times climbers will climb up DRT using a foot-locking technique. This is a Rock Exotica dual sender. Not something I actively climb on, but it's an interesting piece of gear. Petzl makes a shunt that also is used for dual lines, floating anchors and such. It's significant to have the fixed ends on a DRT system at the climber, because either one of these ends can be released and the line can be recovered without going to the anchor. That's extremely significant when your understanding is being used and how it's being used. Again, a single line is being used. Also, the rope is stationary. As a person climbs, the rope is not moving. Another point is that two ropes are stronger than one, although it's just as vulnerable as one. If I cut one of these legs, it's the same as having one line. But as far as strength is concerned, I'm connected to two lines. Again, these are all extremely significant when you're understanding what you're dealing with. This technique, DRT or doubled rope technique, can easily be converted into what I'm going to propose it be called a DmRT, or doubled moving rope technique. As we have both fixed ends here, it's very easy. Note if I tie one of these ends off. If I tie one of these ends off and now turn it into a completely fixed end and allow this to be the free end, what happens when I pull down? I've instantly converted this over to a doubled moving rope technique. It's exactly DRT, but now the rope is moving. So we're going to talk about that next. I can convert either side of that to the fixed end and the free end. When I pull down on the free end, I turn into a DmRT, doubled moving rope technique. So this is what I would, and it really makes sense to me, call a DmRT, doubled moving rope technique. It usually means that a single rope is doubled over something, just like DRT. It has a fixed end and a free end, and both are at the climber. So the free end is allowed to pass the climber, and the fixed end is attached to the climber. Again, just a single rope is used. The rope is moving. It's not stationary. It employs a mechanical advantage. If I'm climbing on this, this is connected to my saddle, and I pull down and it brings me up, I'm using a 2-to-1 mechanical advantage. Again, two ropes are stronger than one, but again, it's just as vulnerable as one. And as I previously showed, DmRT easily converts back to DRT and vice versa. This is actually rather amusing, so I'll just make the point with it. But again, this is the DRT system, right? It has two fixed ends, both of these. It's interesting if you've ever tried to climb on this just for fun. But what happens if you put a foot ascender on each side? I'm not promoting this. I'm not saying it's efficient or anything else. It just brings to point what we're talking about. But it's an alternating DmRT as you take each step, up the rope you go. It's a weird way to climb, but it makes the point. Going straight up 2 ropes, nothing is moving. It's DRT, no mechanical advantage. As soon as I fix either side, it becomes a doubled moving rope technique. And that can be done, like I said, by taking individual steps as you go up the rope. Just thought that would be rather amusing. So as we can see, just a few more letters, and it adds so much more meaning and understanding. If you're going to rescue someone, or you're just trying to get a picture of what the climber is doing, knowing and using these acronyms can get you very close to that understanding. One last thing, it's a technique, not a system. As the exact same components that make up the system, as I've just demonstrated, may result in an entirely different technique, depending on how they are used at that particular time. Thanks for watching.